not so much. There's two things that I saw that record labels are looking for when they see artists perform. And you're right, like they don't take demos anymore. Like demos don't mean anything anymore because most of the money is not going to come from selling CDs. It's going to come from the performances and the merch that people are going to buy around the artist. So what's most important for labels right now is fandom. So it's how much fans you have and how faithful these fans are. This is really what record, like big labels, smaller labels is different. But the big labels that I've worked with, this is what I look at. And it's not so much having a whole bunch of fans, it's about how faithful these fans are to you, like how much they're going to engage with you, how much of a kind of cult, you're doing with your music. Like, are the people following you? Are they going to buy your merch? Are they going to want to see your shows? Are they going to, things like that? So it's not purely on the music. So that's one big part of it. And then on the music side, they need to understand how to package it. So they need to understand how to produce it and whether they can produce it in a genre that will work with the media. So if they listen to your music and it doesn't resonate with anything that is selling at the moment, unfortunately, it's not going to work for them. And that's a really harsh truth with like bigger labels. So I would say like the best way in is to get your music heard directly by an artist that already has an in with that label, and then get a recommendation from that artist. If that artist likes what you're doing, then they will recommend you. And most probably what you want is you want them to come and see your show. And that's what made the difference for us. When that Sony person came to see the show of our band, what made the difference is that everybody was dancing. Everyone was on the dance floor. People were going crazy and asking for more. It wasn't so much about the music itself. It was about how the people reacted to the music. Does that kind of help?
Yeah, it does.
What's the name of your band, if you don't mind me asking? It sounds so fun.
Casa Verde Colectivo.
Cool. I'm gonna check it out later.
Yeah, Casa Verde Colectivo. We had a deal, but the deal fell through because of band politics mostly. But yeah, it's a band that worked for quite some time. And it was one of the most successful bands I've played with on an independent level, in the sense that people were really enjoying the music, coming to every show, buying all the merch, like this kind of thing. For the smaller labels that I've seen, then it's a little bit different because smaller labels are not necessarily, I mean, it depends on the kind of labels, but like smaller labels are either going to be very much about branding. So your music has to fit exactly the genre that they are choosing to have in their catalog. And a lot of these small labels, at least like the good ones, like the ones that are more specialized, like they will have like a lot of music that is not necessarily commercial, but they're gonna like choose a very small area, a very small subgenre, and they're going to become an authority in that small subgenre. So if your music fits that subgenre perfectly, then you've got like good chances that they will pay attention to you. But if your music is just a little bit outside of that subgenre, or they wouldn't be sure that it completely fits, then it's probably they're going to discard you because they want to confuse their listeners, because this is how they build most of their business plans, by having a really faithful group of listeners that are interested only in that, subgenre. So their branding and marketing and the genre identity is really, really important for them. Then some other labels are gonna like take on more like new beginning artists because they're gonna want to produce them, and these are the only labels that could maybe still accept demos, because they're looking for artists that are beginning and they can take and they can develop. Um, but I've seen like a lot of horror stories of artists, really talented artists, going into smaller labels like that. And so I would say, like, if you're approached by someone that sees your show or something like that and kind of tells you, um, yeah, like sign with me and we'll organize this and we'll produce a CD and we'll organize gigs and this and that, just to be really, 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 really careful about anything that you sign. Because, yeah, I know a lot of artists that signed this kind of contract and they got stuck into really bad deals. And then they're stuck with that for like 3 or 4 albums without being able to get out of it. Um, so yeah, these kind of smaller labels that promise too much, I would stay away, me personally. But yeah, I hope that answers a little bit like that question from my own personal perspective. Maybe someone else has another perspective on this.
What would you say is a good deal from a small label? Like, what would you be looking for?
A good deal, I think, for a small label is a label that is ready to take your music as it is. Like that, if you really fit in the genre that this label promotes, that you can just produce music on your own and produce it the way that you like, and they will just take that and expand it to their audience, to their own base of listeners. And maybe they will take a certain percentage of the sales, or you will have some kind of financial deal around it, but you are in total control of all the production side and you still hold all the rights. This is what I would be looking for. It sounds really obvious, but I can assure you, like, when artists get into bad deals, it's not because they don't know this stuff. It's not because, they're not smart enough and they didn't think about, giving up their rights or this and that. It's because usually, like, big labels and labels that are a little bit too much hands-on and want to take control of your music, they kind of know how to emotionally approach artists to kind of say, well, trust me, do what I tell you to do, and you'll become famous. And, everyone is going to listen to your music and it's going to work. But if you don't do that, you're going to stay a nobody. And this is like general line. The way that it's packaged is very elaborate sometimes, but there is a lot of emotional manipulation that is going on. So that's what I would recommend. And I've said this to, to other friends that have come to me and that have told me, like, hey, I just got this deal, what do you think about it? And I'm just like, man, just get it in front of a lawyer. Just don't sign anything. Don't sign anything. Just have a lawyer look at it before, because the pressure is so much. Like, they offer it so much, like it's the deal of a lifetime. And when you're an artist and you're struggling to get your music known, and your dream is to like get your music out there and all that, it's like, it's really, really, really tempting. It's really hard to say no. So that's the thing. I would be really, really careful. Any deal from a small label that respects you as an artist is going to leave you all production rights. And it's going to be like, we like your music. We like it the way that you do it. you have the right to do your music the way you want, and we'll take it from there. That's a good deal, in my opinion.
As for the profit split with the label, like what sort of things are standard to expect?
Oof, that's like a really complicated one. Like again, depends like how much hands-on they are. If it's really like post-production deal, it shouldn't be much. It shouldn't be much, even though some labels are gonna try and sometimes even get as much as like 50-50, depending like how much they say they're gonna put in marketing and in this and in that. So to be like careful about that. So it really depends. But the specifics usually for a post-production deal where you're just basically kind of licensing the music because you've already done all the work beforehand. It shouldn't be more than about, I guess, 15%, something like this. Depending of the investment that they do after. So it really all depends. There's a great book that I read that I think is still relevant. I think everyone should read that. It's called Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business. It's a really straightforward title. But it's written by a lawyer, and it's a lawyer that works with artists, and he's really on the side of the artist, and it's a big Bible. It's like, I don't know, 400-page book or everything. He breaks down every kind of deal, any kind of percentage. He's updated regularly. I don't know which version it's on now. It's be like version 10 or 12 or something like this. But to get these kind of specifics, I really recommend reading that book, Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business. I hope that kind of answers. I don't have like more specific than this.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Like, it's interesting, like how much range and different sort of things there are between like, small and big labels.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. That was really interesting here. I was sort of curious, sort of coming here, I was curious about anyone, or if you had any experience, more from the end of like starting a label.
Yeah, I tried that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about your. I'd love to hear about your experience with that.
It depends, like, why you want to start a label. Like, do you want to start a label for your? Well, I guess first thing to know is that it's really, 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 really hard to make it profitable. So it all depends, like, what are you ready to give the artist? What are you gonna ask the artists in exchange? I'm not sure. I mean, a lot of smaller labels nowadays, it's kind of a label, but also more like event organization. Like it's, it was.
Yeah, that's sort of kind of the
Yeah.
Sort of the that I was sort of interested in.
Yeah. So that's what I tried to do. I wasn't very successful with it, but that doesn't mean that, probably I done a shit ton of mistakes. So I can tell you all the mistakes that I've done so that you don't repeat them, and that you can be successful with yours. I did my label was called Street Cats Records, and it was a label that I've created in India with an Indian partner. And the idea was for me to bring international artists, so to bring artists from outside of India to play in India, because there was actually, I was making a lot of money as a foreigner musician in India. It's kind of interesting because you wouldn't think that there would be so much money in India for music, but actually for international artists, there was. So when I saw the opportunity, I wanted to kind of have other artists benefit. I was like, man, I have like so many, musician friends and amazing artists that I know that would die to make the same amount of money per gig that I'm making. So I created my label for that, for trying to be this kind of bridge. So first mistakes that I made was that understanding that artists are, and I say this with all the love because we're all artists here and I am also an artist, but artists are flaky. So it's a lot of energy to be able to organize things, and things get canceled last minute, and then you need to deal with the venues, and then also if it's an international thing, there was a lot of legal issues that I was not prepared to deal with, such as visas and this and that. I remember the first band that I had over was one that I had over from Portugal to India, and the day before their arrival, they had a gig the next day that I booked for them, and the day before their arrival, they called me in panic and they said, "Mina, we didn't realize that we don't have the proper visa." And I was like, "What?" And so, because I didn't know how much I had to hold their hands through the process. For me it was obvious, but for them it was not. So I would say, like, I wasn't prepared for the amount of hand holding it was going to take me to walk the artist through. And also, a lot of the time, like when you sign up, quote unquote, artists under your label, they kind of expect, like, okay, well, you signed me now, so everything is your job and I can just be the artist, when it's not exactly like that. So you've got to make sure that the people that you are taking under your label are people that understand that it's more of a collaboration than anything else. Like, success depends on the two parties working together. It's not just like, oh, well, you're signing me, you're taking some money, or you're taking a commission or whatever, so now all this is your job and I cannot do anything. You'd be surprised at the amount of people that actually expect this from you once you decide to put yourself out there as a label. So that's a big thing. And then to have like a really, really solid business plan, because you've got to check carefully like the stuff that you want to spend on, and how you're expecting to make some money in return, because most of the time it'll be flush, and this is in lucky scenarios. Most of the times you're going to break even, at least for the first I'd say 3 to 5 years, while you're getting established. But there are ways to do it more as a community. Like you said, there are ways to do it, I think, more in a way that doesn't necessarily ask you to invest so much. Maybe the amount that it asks you of investment is more about you building a very strong audience. So maybe you need to invest on that, on your own marketing and your own audience, so that you have visibility to provide to the artist that you bring in. And that's already great. That's already something great. So, to think about that, because event organizing is a money sucker. Like, it just sucks money down the drain. It's really, really hard to make it not go in the red. So to make sure that you're checking that out. That would be like my basis recommendations.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That is
No problem.
super helpful for, just understanding the whole thing. And because I feel like it's something that people sometimes talk about like so casually, of just like, oh yeah, me and my friends started a record label. It's like, you just make a SoundCloud account and then you're good, and you make a Bandcamp and you're good to go, and like get a friend to do a logo or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, on top of that, as someone who has sort of been on like the other end of that, you know, trying to, you know, like getting music out there and getting in touch with labels and stuff, like, yeah, you do sort of have this idea of them as this like all powerful, like, you know, they have kind of what you want.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you kind of just assume like these people you're emailing are like, oh, this is like your full-time job, and you're just like very invested in this and have lots of knowledge and experience. And like the reality is they're probably just like someone like you as well.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, thank you so much. It's really great to hear. And actually, on that note, I sort of have to run to, fortunately, like a work staff meeting. But thank you so much for picking up the reins, and I really appreciate hearing about your experience. It's really, I think it's very, like in some ways very encouraging, and I think like, you know, some of the downsides are even still encouraging, just in terms of, you know, feeling this sense of like, oh yeah, okay, I'm not like crazy. I haven't been like just like totally missing the plot and not like capitalizing on some super easy opportunities. Like, it is tough and hard, and you know, we're all trying to figure it out. So that
Totally.
in a way is actually very encouraging to me to be like, okay, cool. Like this is sort of how it is. So awesome. Well,
Awesome.
thanks so much, and
Thank you.
Maria, and you know, people who organized.
Awesome. Thanks. I'm glad it's helpful. Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty much that was a good question that he asked about labels, and that's exactly the point that he said of you know, like when we talk about it on the perspective of artists, it's like they, you know, but then when we try to do the same, then we realize no, actually, like, these people are the same. So I think more and more, like now, especially with like all the digital and music, there's no what else can I tell you guys that would be relevant from my experience? I had an idea, I've lost it. Give me a second. I lost it. Maybe it'll come back to me if there's any other questions. Always, always, always have a lawyer if you sign anything. That's the main biggest advice that I can tell anybody. Like, honestly, I've seen too many artists have horror stories, horror stories. Just that's the main thing I repeat to everyone. Just have a lawyer, invest. It's expensive, it's whatever, just invest in the lawyer. And most probably the lawyer is not going to like the contract that you give them, and they will ask you to ask for them to change some things. And that's a good thing. And if they don't want to change it, as hard as it is, I really believe that no opportunity is better than a really bad opportunity. You know, like we say, like no relationship is better than a bad relationship. It's like the same thing. You don't want to be stuck in a bad contract. It's really not cool. And yeah, is there any other questions?
Uh, I don't. I don't think so for me. 'Cause actually, since I have very, very little experience with record labels and stuff like that, then I was thinking I'd show up for the session and listen to someone speak for a while, and then maybe think about questions that would come up after listening. So I'm kind of blank.
Oh yeah, so yeah, but you made me remember what I wanted to say. Um, yeah, so if you're just starting out and you want to like maximize your chances, again, I think that the thing that record labels are most looking at is your audience, and it's not about the numbers of your audience. It's about how involved with you your audience is. So as much energy as we put in our music, I think we should also put into building that kind of world that we create around our music, because this is what people are really attracted to, and this is what will make the difference between someone that will really enjoy listening your music once in a while, and someone that will really become obsessed with what you're doing and will just want to buy everything that you're putting out there, is going to want to wear your tagline on a t-shirt, is going to want to, have posters, is going to want to have like the wallpaper on their laptop, is going to want to. And this kind of loyalty and fandom is the thing that record labels is looking for, because that's how they can make money. At least, I think this doesn't make any difference, like small labels, bigger labels. If you can show that you have this, even if it's not a huge audience, it doesn't have to be huge. But if these people are really devoted to you, you've got something really good to offer a label. So that would be my last, work of recommendation. That's what I'm working on constantly. Like, I'm not saying that I've mastered that at all, but I try to think about these things, and this is how I try to kind of build the world around my music as much as I can. It's a work in progress, but yep. Without being signed to the label, just to have a partner in releasing the album? What do you mean? Um, usually, like, you'll have contracts for a certain number of albums. So you can try to have a deal just for one album, but that doesn't mean you won't be signed under the label like you are. It's just that you'll be signed for just one album. Like most labels, um, they try to sign you for more than one, or you can have like licensing deals. I think more with publishers, which will put your album in their catalog. That's also like a possibility. I'm not sure how you would go about it for that, because publishing houses also, they're kind of like, a lot of times they also do like artist management and things like this. So their catalog for, like, for example, Universal was like this. So they're like a big publishing house. Um, but they also do some artist management. So they find gigs for their artists that are cataloging, or they have a department to do that. So that's why they're keeping their music in their catalog. But yeah, so that's a possibility. I'm not sure the specifics of how that worked to just licensed by a publisher. But otherwise, the other possibilities have a record deal, but you can have like a post record deal. So same thing, like make sure you keep all the production rights. They are not the one producing the album for you. That probably means you're not going to get advances, because a lot of record labels, the way that they work, if they're bigger, they give you an advance. You do all the production and stuff with them. You record the album with them, and then if it gets sold properly, then they get reimbursed on the advance that they give you, and then after they reimburse the advance, then you start making money, a percentage on the sales. But if you're not doing that, so if you're not the whole production thing, which I highly recommend you don't, then they're not going to give you an advance or anything. Probably not going to make money out of it from the get-go. You're probably just going to make some money on the sales, depending of the sales or whatever the deal is. And then in this case, it's easier to get as only one album deal because there's not so much investment from the label. If the label is investing a lot of money for the production, for the marketing, and that, typically they're not going to want to do a single album deal. They'll ask for at least 2 albums, if not 3 or 4. Three albums is common, 4 also is pretty common. And this is one of the reasons why it's really important to get your contract backed by a lawyer, because if you have a bad contract, it's not just for one album, it's for typically many albums, and it sucks. So yeah. But publishers, yeah, you can explore that. But I'm not sure exactly how. Yeah, 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 yeah. And it's normal. It's not uncommon. It's normal because they want to release everything under their own channels. Because especially now with the music sharing thing, depending on how big the label is, maybe they're monetizing YouTube channel, they're monetizing their Spotify account, they're monetizing, all that. So of course they want all the content that they are, that you signed with them for to be under their name. So that's a really good point, because when you're signing up to a label, it's kind of understanding that your audience will kind of be controlled by that label. It's not, in your hand as much as when you are independent. So yeah, it's still your music. You still own the rights to that music. And if people go their Spotify account to listen to your track, they will see your name and your track. But that audience that your music is attracting is not directly in your hands, if that makes any sense. So it's that much more important to really, really, really check and have a really, faithful relationship with the label that you're signing, not just with the label because it's a label, You know, some of that can be good sometimes. For example, if you're doing some kind of really specialized electronic music and you found a label that is not big but is really specialized in that genre, and they have a whole bunch of audience listening to their channels because they're all people that are interested in that genre, this can be a really, really good collaboration. But again, it's understanding that you are trusting them for the audience that they bring. It's not in your hand anymore the same way as when you're independent. So yeah, so your experience is totally normal and valid, and it's a normal thing that will happen. Like, it's not unheard of, and it's not cool. Like, it's not fun. Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
It's
I
been
hope it was helpful.
so helpful. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad if it could help. Amazing. So it was nice to share this with you, and if it could be helpful, then I'm even more happy. And I guess I'll see you guys around soon.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.